You're running your 5K all wrong, and the worst part is nobody's going to tell you. Your coach won't. Your running buddies won't. Because it's easier to just say great job than to look you in the eye and say, you're training like someone who wants to survive a run, not someone who wants to break 19 minutes. And that's the problem. You don't need survival. You need precision. Let's sit with that for a second. Sub 19 for 5K. That's 6:11 pace per mile. Not 8:30, not 7:45, feeling proud of yourself at the coffee shop after. 6:11 for 3.1 miles straight. No coasting. No, I'll pick it up on the downhill. 6:11, mile after mile, while your legs are screaming and your lungs are on fire, and some part of your brain is whispering, just slow down, nobody's watching. Somebody is watching. You are. And you know when you've cut corners. Here's the uncomfortable truth nobody puts on a motivational poster. Most runners chasing sub 19 are training their heart and completely ignoring their economy. And I mean that literally, in the physiological sense. There's a study, Conley and Krahenbuhl, back in 1980, that looked at a group of elite distance runners with basically identical VO2 max numbers, same engine size, on paper. But their race times were wildly different. Why? Running economy, how much oxygen you burn to hold a given pace. Two runners can have the exact same aerobic capacity, and one of them runs 6:11 pace like it's nothing, while the other one is dying at 7:10. That's not talent. That's not heart. That's mechanics. That's efficiency. And almost nobody trains for it directly. So here's a question for you, and I want you to actually sit with it instead of scrolling past. When's the last time you trained your form on purpose? Not went for a run and happened to think about my arms for 10 seconds. I mean, actually drilled it. Actually worked on cadence, on posture, on how your foot lands under your hip instead of way out in front of you, like you're stepping on the brakes every single stride. If the answer is never, that's not a personal failure. That's just what happens when everybody around you is obsessed with mileage and nobody's talking about mechanics. Because here's what happens instead. You see someone go sub 19 and your brain does the dumbest possible thing. It says, they must just run more than me. So you add miles. You go from 20 a week to 30, 30 to 40. You're exhausted, your shins hurt, you're irritable with your family, and your 5K time drops by what, 11 seconds? 12? You feel cheated. You're not being cheated, you're just solving the wrong problem. More miles fixes an aerobic base problem. It does nothing for an economy problem. And for a huge number of you watching this, economy is the actual bottleneck, not aerobic capacity. Let's do a reality check, because I promised you no fluff, and I meant it. If your VO2 max is already solid, and for most adults who've been running consistently for a year or more, it usually is, then more junk mileage is a low-return investment. You're basically pouring water into a bucket that's already full and wondering why it's not filling up faster. The bucket isn't the problem anymore. The shape of the bucket is the problem. That's economy. That's mechanics. That's the stuff that doesn't show up on your Strava summary. So nobody talks about it. So everybody ignores it. So everybody stays stuck at 1940 for 2 straight years, wondering what's wrong with them. Nothing is wrong with you. You've just been training the wrong lever. So what actually fixes this? Not in theory. In practice this week, on your actual legs. First thing, and this is going to sound almost insultingly simple, cadence. Most recreational runners chasing a sub-19 5K are running somewhere around 165 to 172 steps per minute. Elite 5K runners are usually sitting closer to 180, sometimes higher. That gap matters more than people think. A slower cadence usually means longer ground contact time, more vertical bounce, more braking force every time your foot hits the pavement. You're literally putting the brakes on, hundreds of times, every single run, and wondering why your legs are cooked by mile 2. Speeding up your cadence, even by 5 or 6 steps a minute, shortens your stride just enough to land your foot closer under your center of mass, instead of way out in front like a kickstand. Less braking, less wasted energy. More of what you've got actually going into forward motion instead of into absorbing impact. You don't fix this by thinking about it during your race. You fix it in practice, on easy days, when there's no pressure and you can actually feel what you're doing. Put on a metronome app, set it to your current cadence +5, and just run easy for 10 minutes with that beat in your ear. It'll feel weird. It'll feel too quick, almost twitchy. That's fine. That's supposed to happen. Your body's been running one way for years. It's not going to feel natural on day one. Give it 2-3 weeks of consistent short doses, not the whole run, just chunks of it, and it starts to feel like yours. Now here's where it gets interesting, and here's the part that flips a lot of runners' whole mental model upside down. You'd think logically that to run faster, you should run fast more often. Makes sense on paper. It's almost always wrong in practice. The research on this, and this is the second real piece of evidence I want you to actually hold on to, comes from work on polarized training, most famously studied by physiologist Steven Sealer, looking at elite endurance athletes across multiple sports. What he found over and over was that the highest performers were spending somewhere around 80% of their training time at genuinely easy, low-intensity effort. Not kind of easy. Not comfortably hard, I guess. Actually easy. Conversational. The kind of pace that feels almost embarrassingly slow. And only about 20% of their training time was spent hard, real, high-intensity work. Almost nothing in between. That middle zone. That medium effort. Kind of pushing it. Not quite racing pace that so many runners live in every single day because it feels productive. That's actually where a lot of people waste their best training energy. It's too hard to properly recover from and too easy to actually build top-end speed. It's the zone that feels the most like working hard and does the least for your 5K time. Runners who live there day after day plateau. Not because they're not trying, because they're trying in the wrong gear. So think about your last 2 weeks of training, honestly. How many of your runs were genuinely embarrassingly easy? And how many were that gray zone, that I feel like I'm working pace, that isn't slow enough to recover and isn't hard enough to actually move the needle? If most of your week lives in that gray zone, that's not dedication. That's spinning your wheels while feeling like you're making progress. And that gap between feeling productive and actually improving, that's where a lot of runners lose years. Here's the part that's going to sting a little, so brace yourself. Slowing down your easy days is not the soft option. It's not the lazy version of training. It's actually the harder discipline, because your ego hates it. Your ego wants every run to feel like something. It wants the Strava kudos. It wants to feel like you earned your dinner. But if you're running your easy days at a pace that leaves you gasping, you're stealing energy from the 1 or 2 hard sessions a week that actually build your speed. You show up to your interval day already half-cooked. You can't hit the paces you need to hit. You tell yourself you're just having an off day. You're not having an off day. You had 4 off days that led up to this one, and you didn't even notice, because they all felt like good, solid effort runs. So here's the practical version. No textbook. Just what you actually do starting this week. Most of your running, and I mean most, like the majority of your total mileage, needs to feel like you could hold a conversation the entire time without gasping between sentences. If you can't talk in full sentences, you're not running easy, you're running medium, and medium is the trap. Then, once or twice a week, you go hard, genuinely hard, not brisk, hard. Short, sharp efforts with real recovery in between, where you're actually practicing the neuromuscular pattern of moving at 6:11 pace and faster. So your body remembers what that speed feels like before race day, instead of meeting it for the first time when the gun goes off. That combination, sharpening your cadence so you're not breaking with every stride, and polarizing your effort so your easy days are actually easy and your hard days are actually hard. That's not a hack. It's not a shortcut. It's just correcting 2 things that almost nobody corrects because they're not exciting. Nobody posts about cadence drills. Nobody brags about running slow on purpose. But that's the boring, unglamorous stuff that separates the person stuck at 1940 from the person who finally sees 1850-something on the clock and just stands there for a second, stunned, because they've been chasing that number for 2 years, and it finally showed up, And here's the moment I actually want you to sit with, because this is the whole point of everything I just said. You've probably been treating your 5K like a test of willpower. Like if you just want it enough, hurt enough, grind through enough miles, the time will eventually fall. But willpower was never the missing ingredient. You've got plenty of that. You're still here, still training, still watching videos like this one at whatever hour it is instead of just giving up. The missing ingredient was information. You were pushing hard in the wrong places and going easy in the wrong places, and no amount of grit fixes a strategy problem. That's the aha. It was never about trying harder. It was about finally training on purpose instead of training on instinct. Next time you lace up, that's the question to ask yourself before you even start moving. Is this run supposed to feel easy, or is it supposed to hurt? If you don't know the answer before your foot hits the pavement, that's the actual problem you've been trying to outrun. Now, here's where it gets interesting, because fixing your form and fixing your effort distribution gets you most of the way there. But there's one more piece, the piece that actually moves your engine itself, not just how efficiently you use it. And that piece is your VO2 max. Do this specific thing twice a week, and you can push that number up faster than almost anything else you're currently doing. I'm going to show you exactly what that looks like next time, step by step, no guessing. If this actually shifted something in how you think about your training, don't just scroll past it. Hit subscribe, drop a like, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I read every single one. Share this with the training partner who's been stuck at the same 5K time for way too long. They need to hear this too. And if you want the full breakdown, the structured plans, the stuff that goes deeper than what fits in one video, become a member through the link pinned in the comments. See you in the next one.